So, I've always been the weird one in my family. You know, the black sheep and all that. I'm Ella Thompson, 29 years old now, but I felt like I don't fit in for pretty much forever. Growing up, I was the oldest kid of doctors Margaret and Robert Thompson. Yeah, my parents were big shots, but none of that good stuff ever really came my way. Nah, all the perks went to my younger twin brothers, Jack and Oliver. From the second those two popped out, it was like I became invisible to my parents. It started off small, you know? They'd get a bigger piece of cake or a new toy. But as we got older, it got way worse and super obvious. I remember when I turned 10. I'd been dropping hints for ages about this art set I saw in a shop window. Nothing crazy, just a basic kit with some decent paints and brushes. When my birthday rolled around, I was so pumped to open my one present, and what do I find? A freaking math workbook. When I hit my teenage years, the favoritism got even more in your face. Family trips were all about what the boys wanted. If Jack felt like skiing, boom, we're off to the slopes. If Oliver was into surfing that year, hello beach vacation. My ideas? Always got shot down or ignored. College applications. Man, that's a touchy subject. When I was 17, I fell in love with art restoration. I'd hang out at the local museum for hours, bugging the staff with questions about how they fixed up old art. When I brought up studying art restoration in college, you'd think I'd said I wanted to join the circus or something. Art restoration? Mom laughed. Ella, get real. That's not a proper job. Yeah, Ella, Jack butted in with this smug look. Why don't you do something useful, like become a doctor? I'll never forget how proud my parents looked when Jack said that. It was a look I'd never seen them give me. Even though they didn't have my back, I was determined to make it happen. When college acceptance letters started showing up, I was over the moon to find out I'd scored a scholarship to study art restoration. I remember running into the kitchen, waving the letter around like a crazy person. Mom, Dad, I got a scholarship. Mom barely looked up from her medical journal. That's nice, honey. Did you hear the boys got perfect scores on their SATs? The day I left for college was so different from when the twins would leave 2 years later. I packed up my second-hand laptop and thrift store clothes, getting ready to take the bus to my not-so-fancy state school. My parents were too caught up in their work to even give me a ride to the bus station. But there was one person who actually saw me for who I was. My grandma, Elizabeth. She showed up that day, and right before I was about to leave, she pulled me aside. Ella, sweetie, she said, pushing a small envelope into my hand. I'm so proud of you. Don't ever forget that. Inside the envelope was a check, not enough to change my whole life, but enough to make things a bit easier. But more than the money, it was the fact that she actually noticed me that meant everything. So, college was kind of a mixed bag for me. On one hand, I was finally free from always being compared to Jack and Oliver. I could really dive into my studies without feeling like I was in some weird competition for attention. But on the other hand, money was tight. Like, really tight. While I was barely getting by on my scholarship and working part-time jobs, I'd hear about all the fancy stuff my brothers were up to through family calls and social media. Fancy frat parties, spring break trips to crazy places, internships at big shot hospitals, all paid for by our parents, of course. Time went by, and I threw myself into my studies like crazy. Art restoration became more than just what I wanted to do for a job, it was my escape, my happy place. There was something really satisfying about bringing beauty back to old, forgotten pieces, about showing the hidden potential under layers of neglect and damage. In my last year, I scored an internship at this small but respected museum. It wasn't fancy work, mostly cleaning and organizing stuff, but it was a way in. I was over the moon. When I called home to share the news, my mother's response was exactly what I expected, lukewarm at best. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she said, sounding distracted. "Did you hear about Jack's research paper? It's being published in a major medical journal." I held back a sigh. "That's great, Mom. Listen, I was thinking of coming home for a weekend soon. Maybe we could. Oh, I'm not sure that's a good idea, she cut me off quick. Your father and I are going to be really busy. We're helping the boys with their research papers. You understand, right? As I hung up the phone, I felt that familiar mix of anger and hurt building up in my chest. But this time, there was something else too. A little spark of defiance, of determination. I looked around my tiny dorm room, at the art books piled up on my desk, at the half-finished restoration project taking up most of my floor. This was my world now, one I had built for myself despite everything. Screw them, I muttered to the empty room. I don't need their approval. But even as I said it, a part of me knew it wasn't true. As much as I tried to deny it, a small part of me still wanted my parents to recognize me, still hoped that one day they'd see me for who I really was. So, graduation day came and went without much fuss from my family. My big moment was marked by a quick dinner at some chain restaurant. So, Ella, what's next? Dad asked, barely looking up from his menu. I sat up straight, trying to sound confident. I actually got a job offer, in one of the museums in New York. Dad frowned. I don't know, Ella. New York is expensive. How much does this job pay? I felt my face get hot as I mumbled the not-so-impressive starting salary. The disappointment on their faces was super obvious. The rest of the dinner was a blur of thinly veiled criticism and comparisons to Jack and Oliver's academic awesomeness. As we were leaving the restaurant, Grandma Elizabeth pulled me aside. Don't let them dim your light, my dear, she whispered, pressing a small envelope into my hand. Go to New York. Chase your dreams. Inside the envelope was a check, enough to cover my first month's rent in the city. I hugged her tight, trying not to cry. The next few years were crazy. I threw myself into my work, slowly but surely making a name for myself in the world of art restoration. It was during this time that I met Noah. Noah was a struggling graphic designer with a nice smile and this infectious passion for his work. We clicked right away over our shared love of art and our experiences as underdogs in our fields. After dating for a while, I decided it was time for Noah to meet my family. From the second we sat down, it was clear my parents had other ideas. They bombarded Noah with questions, each one more pointed than the last. So, Noah, Dad started, trying to sound casual but failing, what exactly are your long-term career prospects? Noah shifted in his seat, looking uncomfortable. Well, I'm building my client base. It takes time, but I'm making progress. Mom jumped in. And your current income? Is it enough to support a family? I felt my face get hot. Mom, that's not. It's okay, Ella, Noah said, squeezing my hand under the table. I'm not where I want to be money-wise yet, Dr. Thompson, but I'm working hard to get there. The interrogation kept going throughout dinner. With each question, I could see Noah's confidence taking a hit, and my own anger rising. As we were leaving, Mom pulled me aside. Ella, honey, I know you think you care for this boy, but you need to be realistic. You've already chosen a challenging career path. Don't make it worse by attaching yourself to someone with no real future. Mom, I hissed, shocked at how blunt she was being. Dad joined in. Your mother's right, Ella. You need to think about your future. This Noah seems nice enough, but is he really good enough for you? You could do so much better. I stood there, speechless, as years of pent-up frustration threatened to explode. How dare they judge Noah? How dare they once again dismiss my choices? So, as Noah and I started planning our wedding, reality hit us hard. Our combined savings were pretty pathetic, barely enough for a simple ceremony. One night, after staring at budget spreadsheets for hours, I decided to bring it up with my parents. Maybe they'd want to chip in. Mom, Dad, I started hesitantly during our weekly phone call. Noah and I have set a date for the wedding. We're trying to keep costs down, but I was wondering if maybe you'd like to help out a little? Even just with the planning? The silence on the other end of the line was so long and awkward. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice cold as ice. Ella, you're an adult now. If you've chosen to marry this person, then you need to handle the consequences yourself. I hung up feeling like crap, but not really surprised. Once again, Grandma Elizabeth swooped in to save the day. When I told her about the situation, she didn't hesitate to help. My dear, she said, her voice warm over the phone, I may not be able to give you the wedding of your dreams, but I want to help make your day special. She sent over some money that, while not a ton, made a huge difference to our plans. The wedding day arrived, and I had this mix of excitement and nerves churning in my stomach. The community center we'd rented was simple, but looked nice, decorated with wildflowers and twinkly lights. Our small group of friends had pitched in, helping with everything from the decorations to the homemade cake. As I walked down the makeshift aisle, Noah's face lit up with a smile that made all the struggle worth it. For a moment, I forgot about everything else, the money stress, my family being jerks, and just soaked in the love radiating from his eyes. The bubble burst as soon as I caught sight of my family. Mom and Dad sat stiffly in the front row, looking bored and disgusted. I overheard Mom muttering to Dad about the tacky decorations and cheap food. Jack and Oliver were even worse, snickering in the corner and constantly on their phones. I tried to ignore them, focusing instead on our vows and the supportive faces of our friends. It wasn't until the next day that I realized just how cruel they could be. I woke up to a ton of notifications on my phone. Jack and Oliver had gone on social media, posting a bunch of unflattering photos from the wedding. Congrats to our big sis on her special day, read one caption under a blurry photo of Noah and me cutting our homemade cake. Nothing says true love like a dollar store wedding. Another post showed a picture of the buffet table next to a photo of a fancy meal from some high-end restaurant. Ella's wedding versus our average Tuesday lunch. Guess which one's which? The comments section was a war zone. Some relatives were shocked at the brothers' behavior. This is completely unacceptable. You should be ashamed of yourselves, wrote Aunt Sarah. But others seemed to think it was funny. Savage but true. That wedding looked like a homeless convention, commented our cousin Tim. I felt sick reading through the comments. But what really broke my heart was seeing my parents' responses. Instead of telling their sons off, they were actually encouraging them. Mom had commented, "Boys will be boys. It's just a bit of harmless fun." I didn't call them and demand an apology. I just decided to forget about them for a while. So, 6 months after our wedding, it was time for the annual Thompson family reunion. Even though I was worried about it, Noah thought I should go, hoping it might be a chance to clear the air. Man, were we wrong. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I managed to keep it together for the first hour, making polite conversation and avoiding my immediate family as much as I could. But then I overheard Jack bragging about his latest fancy vacation, paid for by our parents, of course. Something inside me just snapped. "Must be nice," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "To have mommy and daddy bankroll your entire life." The room went dead quiet. Jack stared at me, his mouth hanging open. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means," I shot back, years of pent-up frustration finally boiling over. "You and Oliver have been handed everything on a silver platter, while I've had to fight for every scrap of recognition or support." Mom stepped forward, her face red with anger. "Now, Ella, you're being ridiculous. We've always treated you children equally." I let out a bitter laugh. "Equally? Are you kidding me? Let's talk about equal, shall we?" I started counting off on my fingers. Private school tuition for the boys, public school for me. Brand new cars for their 16th birthdays, nothing for mine. And let's not forget the crowning achievement, $300,000 for their Ivy League medical educations, while I had to scrape by on scholarships and loans. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, all eyes on our family's dirty laundry being aired so publicly. Mom's voice was ice cold when she spoke. "If you're so obsessed with money, Ella, perhaps you should have married someone rich instead of your poor husband." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Noah, who had been silently supporting me, stiffened beside me. "How dare you?" I hissed, feeling tears in my eyes. "Noah is worth 10 of you. He actually loves me for who I am, not for how I can make him look good to his country club friends." The reunion turned into total chaos. Everyone was throwing accusations, bringing up old grudges, and years of resentment came pouring out. In the middle of all the shouting, a strong voice cut through the noise. "Enough." Everyone turned to see Grandma Elizabeth standing up, her usually kind face looking stern and angry. "I have watched this family tear itself apart for years, and I won't stand for it anymore," she declared. "Margaret, Robert, your treatment of Ella has been shameful. And you boys," she turned to Jack and Oliver, "your cruelty towards your sister is unforgivable." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Mom, never one to back down, spat out, "Mother, you don't understand. Ella has always been difficult, always causing problems." "No, Margaret," Grandma interrupted. "The only problem here is your blatant favoritism and inability to see the damage you've done." I looked around the room, at the shocked faces of my relatives, at my grandmother's resolute stance, at my parents' anger, and my brother's smug expressions. In that moment, something inside me broke and then came back together differently. "I'm done," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm done trying to win your approval, done trying to be part of this toxic family. Noah and I are leaving, and don't bother trying to contact us." The months that followed were tough. Noah was my rock through it all. He held me when the sadness hit, celebrated the small victories, and never once made me feel guilty for the family drama I'd brought into our lives. So, life has this weird way of throwing you for a loop when you least expect it. It all kicked off with a phone call. Noah had been working his butt off for weeks, putting everything he had into a pitch for this big-time client. When he answered the phone that sunny Tuesday morning, I could tell from the look on his face that something major had gone down. "We got it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ella, we got the contract." The next few months were crazy. Noah's little design firm blew up overnight, the fancy client opening doors we never thought we'd see. Suddenly, we weren't just scraping by, we were rolling in it. But with our new success, came this unexpected complication. My phone started blowing up with notifications, friend requests from family members I'd long since blocked, messages from distant relatives suddenly wanting to catch up. And then, the call I'd been dreading. "Ella, sweetheart." My mother's voice, sickly sweet, came through the line. "We've heard the wonderful news about Noah's business. We always knew you two would make it." The bullshit kept coming. My father got on the line, talking about how proud they were, how they'd always believed in us. I listened in stunned silence, getting angrier with each lie. "We'd love to see you," Mom chirped. "Maybe we could all have dinner, celebrate your success as a family?" That snapped me out of it. "As a family?" I repeated, my voice hard. "We haven't been a family for a long time, and that's not going to change just because our bank account has." I stuck to my guns. When my parents showed up at our door out of the blue, I didn't let them in. When they sent fancy gifts, I sent them right back unopened. Instead, Noah and I focused on building the life we'd always wanted. We worked hard, saved smart, and eventually found ourselves signing the papers for a beautiful apartment right in the middle of the city. Excited to share our happiness, I posted a photo on social media. It was a simple shot, Noah and I, keys in hand, standing in front of our new home. Next to it was a picture from our most recent visit with Grandma Elizabeth, her proud smile beaming at the camera. "New beginnings and old love," I captioned it. Grateful for those who've been there through it all. New home, family. As I hit post, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. This was my family now, Noah, Grandma Elizabeth, and the friends who had stood by us through thick and thin. We had built this life for ourselves, despite the odds, despite all the people who said we couldn't do it. The soft evening light was coming through the windows of our new apartment as I was busy in the kitchen, getting dinner ready for Noah and Grandma Elizabeth. It was our first real family dinner in our new place, and I wanted everything to be just right. The sudden, aggressive pounding on the front door shattered that peace in an instant. "Ella, open up. We know you're in there." My blood ran cold. I'd know those voices anywhere, Jack and Oliver. Before I could even react, the door burst open. My brothers stormed in, their faces twisted with anger. I barely had time to see Noah jumping to his feet before Jack was in my face, jabbing an accusing finger at my chest. "You manipulative little bitch," he snarled. "We always knew you were playing the long game, but this? This is low, even for you." I stumbled back, shocked by how much venom was in his voice. "What are you talking about?" Oliver laughed, and it was a harsh, ugly sound. "Don't play dumb, Ella. We saw your little social media post. Showing off your new apartment, posing with Grandma. You think we can't put two and two together?" It hit me what they were thinking. "You think Grandma bought us this apartment?" "We know she did," Jack spat. "You've been playing the poor, neglected child for years, worming your way into her good graces. And now you've manipulated her into making you the sole heir." I felt a surge of anger, straightening my spine. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Noah and I bought this apartment ourselves. With our own money, that we earned." Oliver sneered, his eyes darting around the room. "Right, sure you did. Where is the old bat anyway? Hiding her away so we can't talk sense into her? That crazy old woman should be in a cemetery by now. I can't wait for her to kick the bucket so I can sell her house and live it up." The room fell deadly silent. For a moment, I thought I might have imagined those horrific words. Then, a quiet voice spoke from the doorway of the guest room. "So this is how you truly feel about me." All heads turned to see Grandma Elizabeth standing there, her face a mask of shock and disappointment. The color drained from Jack and Oliver's faces as they realized their grandmother had heard every word. "Grandma," Jack stammered, we didn't mean." Elizabeth held up a hand, shutting him up. "I've heard enough," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I finally understand who truly values me and who sees me as nothing more than a meal ticket." I found my voice, strengthened by my grandmother's presence. "I think you both need to leave. Now." For a moment, it looked like they might argue. But one look at Grandma's face, a mixture of hurt and resolve, seemed to deflate them. They slunk towards the door, muttering weak excuses. The aftermath of that crazy evening hit like a storm. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, constantly reminding me of the mess that had blown up. Mom's name popped up on the screen for what felt like the millionth time. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Ella," her voice was sharp, not sounding like a mom at all. "You need to fix this. Your grandmother is furious with the boys. You need to smooth things over, tell her it was all a misunderstanding." I let out a bitter laugh. "A misunderstanding?" "They broke into my home and said they couldn't wait for her to die so they could sell her house." "How exactly is that a misunderstanding?" "They didn't mean it," Dad chimed in, apparently on speakerphone. "You know how the boys can be. They were just upset." "Upset about what?" I challenged. "That Noah and I bought an apartment with our own money? That Grandma loves me?" Mom's voice turned sickly sweet. "Sweetheart, we know you've always felt left out. But you need to think about what's best for the family. Your brothers deserve that inheritance. Don't be selfish." Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt came pouring out. "Selfish? You're calling me selfish?" After years of favoritism, of dismissing my achievements, of treating Noah and me like second-class citizens? And now you have the audacity to demand I give up an inheritance I never even asked for? "Now, Ella," Dad started, but I cut him off. "No. I'm done. I'm done with the manipulation, the guilt trips, all of it. Don't call me again. Don't text. Don't show up at my door. We're through." Over the next few days, I blocked their numbers, along with Jack and Oliver's. It was painful, like cutting off a diseased limb, but necessary for healing to begin. As the dust settled, I found myself surrounded by a different kind of warmth. Grandma Elizabeth, now fully aware of the family dynamics she had long suspected, became an even more constant presence in our lives. Aunt Sarah, who had reached out after the wedding fiasco, became a regular visitor. "I always knew you were special, Ella," she said, hugging me tightly. "I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner." Other relatives, cousins, and distant aunts and uncles who had witnessed my family's mistreatment over the years, reached out with messages of support. It was as if a veil had been lifted, allowing genuine relationships to flourish where there had once been only obligation. Noah's family, bless them, wrapped me in a blanket of unconditional love. His parents, who had watched from the sidelines as my own family tore me down, went out of their way to make me feel cherished. Noah and I threw ourselves into making our new apartment a home. Each piece of furniture, each photo on the wall, was a testament to the life we were building together, a life founded on mutual respect, support, and love.